Hey, what's going on, guys? The next project today on my 1992 Dodge W250 is we are going to be installing an auxiliary fuel filter that's in line with the existing fuel system, and it's going to be before the stock fuel filter, which is on the driver's side of the engine. The stock fuel filter is also a water separator, and the fuel filter that we're going to be adding is just a fuel filter by Cat. I'll show you all of the supplies that we're going to be using if you want to do this project yourself. Here's the stock fuel filter we're going to be replacing. It's a fuel filter and water separator. That's the part number on that. And the water separator goes in the bottom where that sensor is. And then this is, I have this written down as a 25 micron fuel filter, and then the auxiliary fuel filter, you can see that for size comparison. And this fuel filter by Cat, there's a part number on it, filters down to 2 microns, and it's a high efficiency fuel filter, so we'll be adding that. Here's some of the other parts. Just the advantages of this fine fuel filtration system is you're going to have cleaner fuel, and cleaner fuel means less wear and tear on not only everything in line with your fuel system, so your injection pump and your injectors. Cleaner fuel will be easier on those parts, and overall just better for your truck. So it's more important for the newer trucks where they have they need much finer fuel filtration because they have different injection systems. Like on my dad's truck, the common rail systems, they need a much finer fuel filtration. We don't really need them so much on these trucks, but it's not a bad idea to do it anyways. In addition to that, I also use, every time I fill up, this OptiLube XPD, which prevents fuel gelling and all this other stuff, keeps injectors clean, supposedly improves fuel mileage, and just lubricates your fuel in general. So in order to mount this, we're going to be mounting that on the frame on the driver's side of the truck. I'll show you in a minute. This is the base that we're going to be using, so that screws into there. This base is from Baldwin filters. There's the part number for that. And these bolts, I have this written down. There's 4 bolts that are 3/8 16 for the base that screw in to those 4 holes. And then the inlet and outlet on these are 7/8 14. And I have already gotten all the parts, so I'll show you the part numbers if you want to do this. These fittings right here, 10 AN to 6 AN, they thread into the inlet and outlet. If you're there. And then these part numbers is the 6 AN to 5/16 hose fitting, and that's going to screw onto there. So once that's screwed onto there on both sides, you'll take this fuel line. I can't remember if I should do the part number for that. It's part number. And you take this fuel line. This is the fuel line I'm using, 5/16 R7 fuel line. That's rated for diesel. That's important. And that's going to be going onto there. And then I've got some fuel clamps. Fuel injection hose clamps for 5/16 hose. And that'll be onto that on both sides of this. And then I'll have a bit of hose running from each side of this to the existing fuel line on the truck, which is just some hard plastic hose, and that'll fit over top of there again with hose clamps. So I'll show you underneath the truck of where I'm potentially going to mount it and how I'm going to do that. I actually need to show you one more thing. This here is some 3/16 inch plate steel. I've already started a little bit on how I'm going to mount it. The 4 bolts here for the filter is going to go there. and then I'm going to hang it off the top of the frame rail with these 2 bolts and just pinch the frame rail onto this plate. That's some pretty thick plate, so it shouldn't have a problem holding that light fuel filter. Okay, so we're underneath the driver's side of the truck now, and here's the frame rail. So I was contemplating 2 different spots to mount this. So have that piece of 3/16 plate. It's going to go on top and then stick out and hold the filter down this way. I was thinking about mounting it here, but then decided to mount it over here. So these 2 holes I've already pre-drilled, and then that's where I'm going to mount it. These lines here are the fuel lines. See, they're just a hard plastic. They were mounted up onto the frame. See these with these little clips that just go in a couple of holes. That's hard to see. So that just pulls down, and then we'll have to cut them in a couple spots. There's 2 lines. One's the feed, and then one's the return. We'll just determine which one's the feed, so we know which one to cut. Okay, so here it is in its test fitted position. We've got it 1 inch or so away from the frame, and that's how it's going to be mounted up on the top of the frame rail. I've just got a couple bolts in there now just to test fit it. That's where it would sit height wise too. It doesn't stick down too much past the frame rail, and plus it's got a few cross members to protect it anyways, so it's not bad. So we've got enough room on the right and the left to be able to hook up our hoses too. So I'm going to take off that plate and prep it for paint and paint it before we put everything back on. Okay, so I'm just pre-assembling the filter head and the fittings. I'm putting a thin coat of Permatex on all the fittings. So I'm putting these 10 AN to 6 AN fittings on first, and then these 6 AN to 5/16 hose fittings on after that. Okay, so I've pre-mounted the filter head to the bracket. Note that the filter is directional and it has arrows on it, so I'm going to hang it on the frame like that, and the arrows are pointing towards the front of the truck with the flow of the fuel. Okay, so we've installed the whole fuel filter here now. Cut into the fuel feed line here and put our hose clamps on. Being careful not to put the hose clamps too tight because that's still just a plastic line, hard plastic. Making sure there's no kinks in those hoses. This is what it looks like from this side. And then up front, took the hose and run it through there just so there's no kinks, and run it up to about here just before that clip on the frame, and that's where we made our connection. So now we're going to do the engine, the factory engine fuel filter, and then once we do that, finish that, we'll see if we have to prime the system before we try and start it. Alright, now after replacing the main engine fuel filter, just down in here, there it is, with the sensor on the bottom. To bleed the whole fuel system now, since we got that large filter, I'll show you here, just on top of, need a better angle. Okay, right here. So there's the fuel filter down there, and then above that, the fuel line runs up to there on the right, that right banjo bolt. This left banjo bolt has 2 bolts on it. That's a bigger banjo bolt, and then the small 10mm nut, or sorry, bolt. You take a 10mm wrench and take that off, and then the priming system right here on the fuel pump is there. This is a aftermarket 2nd gen fuel pump, but on the 1st gens it's got a little lever on the side, which is sort of the same idea. You pump that until fuel starts to squirt out of there, and then tighten that 10mm back up, and then start your truck up, and it should be all the air should be out of the system. Alright, so it fired up, no problem. If you're looking to install an aftermarket fuel filter that filters down to a finer rating, hopefully this helps and gives you some tips if you're looking to do one yourself. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.